Welcome to Classical Chats. I'm Tiffany. I'm very excited that Classical Chats are back. For those who have been subscribed to our YouTube channel, despite our many, many months of inactivity, thank you very much for your patience. I'm very excited this year to begin Classical Chats again. I really enjoy doing this series because it's just so inspiring to hear all kinds of people and their journeys with classical music. Today, it's an exciting day because, well, classical chats are back. First episode is with Matthew Lipman. You might have seen him from my recent performance of Schumann Quartet, and I'm very excited that he agreed to come on and be our first guest. I think viola, in general, does not get enough recognition for its beautiful tone and beautiful instrument, so I'm just excited that Matt is coming on. He's a very, very accomplished violist, and he has performed as a soloist, as a chamber musician, as part of Lincoln Center's Chamber Music Society, which is a very, very prestigious group in New York. And he's also on the faculty of Stony Brook. So many things to talk about. I'm very excited to talk to him. Hi.
Hello.
Nice to see you.
Nice to see you, Tiffany.
So, how's your viola? You're very, very close with it right now.
She's good. Her name's Aretha.
She has a name.
Yeah, Aretha, like the singer.
Ah,
Lots of
Aretha Franklin.
soul, nice and
Mm,
deep tone.
that's actually pretty good. When did you name? When did you come up with the name?
Well, I've been playing on this for over 10 years,
Mm.
and the name came quite at the beginning. Um, at first, because I was like, this viola's a diva,
Ha.
and so I thought Aretha, and also because of the tone.
The tone is really nice. So for those who are joining in, we played together recently. Well, not that recently actually. It's been what, 3 weeks?
Yeah, three
3 weeks.
weeks.
It's like
Yeah.
a long time, but it isn't a long time at the same time.
I mean, in the grand scheme of things, that's very recently.
The grand scheme of things, yes, the pandemic year maybe. Yeah.
And it was also our first time playing together.
Yeah, it was my first time meeting you and playing with
Yeah.
you. And the tone is definitely very unique, and I remember my audiences were commenting on your sound very much. So
Oh,
I'm excited to have you come on to
oh, that's
Classical Chats.
I'm excited to be here.
So
Thank you so much.
I just love how everything is color coordinated, but that no one cares except maybe myself. Just like
Well,
everything in your screen
it's easy when all you wear is blue.
matches very well, but the
Yeah,
gold and
yeah.
the anyway. Okay, I need to stop rambling. So I ask every single classical chat guest this question, which is, how did you start your journey with classical music and also with viola?
It's actually an interesting story. So I started music in fourth grade in public school, and I actually started with the viola. So it's a little bit abnormal. A lot of people start younger on violin with private lessons, etc. But my journey with music started before that. So I grew up in the Jewish religion, and I really, really wanted to play the trumpet because I was the shofar blower. And for those who might not know what a shofar is, it's basically a large ram's horn that on high holidays, some designated person in the synagogue um, makes these ram horn calls. It only happens once or twice a year. And as a kid, I was designated to do that. I don't know why. I
I
guess
was wondering why.
yeah, maybe they sensed that I had some talent or something. I don't know, but I originally wanted to play trumpet, but because of that.
But it's so different. You don't really think of it as a very soulful, like dark kind of string instrument tone.
Yeah, no, the the viola was accidental, and the reason is because trumpet was offered the year after in school. So I thought I would just take any instrument just to get a head start on reading music,
So
etc.
it's like a temp job thing.
Yeah, like my intention was to switch to trumpet, and therefore I didn't care which string instrument. And the director therefore was like, "Oh, you should play viola because nobody ever picks
Yeah,
viola."
that's true.
And Newsflash, I didn't switch to trumpet.
How come?
I just was immediately in love um, with the sound of the instrument. And I remember the very first week, we were only assigned to be able to pizzicato, pluck the open strings. And I was so excited. I went home and I taught myself the whole first year's book in like 1 week.
Wow.
Probably not the right way. I
But
was
there's
just
your
really
talent.
no, I was just really excited.
Oh, that's cute.
Yeah, so the shofar and the trumpet didn't really work out in the end, but music did.
You never, that's great, but you never thought maybe I would play the trumpet too, or you just were satisfied enough with the viola?
No, I never looked back at the trumpet, but I did consider while I was a teenager switching to violin.
Mm. How come?
Um, a lot of people told me that I had the personality of a violinist,
What
which
does that mean?
I don't think it's a compliment.
Uh, I don't want to offend any violinists, but what does that even mean? What is a violinist's personality?
I just think it's somebody who's
Constantly leading?
yeah, or likes being in the spotlight, or like I said about this instrument,
Ah, so
diva.
you're a diva.
Well, a little bit.
Mm. But then, how did you decide to pursue music beyond just learning the viola in school?
Oh, you mean like professionally?
I guess. I mean, something must have happened between fourth grade until now.
Honestly, I never had any expectations. I don't come from a musical family. I never had parents who were kind of practicing along with me or um,
Yeah, me neither.
forceful in any way.
That's good.
Um, I think so. And, at first, my first goal, I loved it immediately. And at first, I thought, okay, I will be, a string teacher in a public school. And then that seemed like it was not my destiny. And then I thought, okay, maybe I'll be in an orchestra. And then, we kept just riding the wave. And now I'm here and I couldn't be happier or more grateful,
I
honestly.
mean, yeah, you're doing really great. I mean, it's amazing. I also heard what you played. Well, not played today, but I guess it was recorded for the
Mm.
Chamber Society. That was a really interesting piece.
Oh yeah, that was fun. So I guess your viewers will watch this after that.
Or we can insert
But
it here. Thank
oh,
you, mate.
insert it. Yeah.
But yeah, it was
Um,
really cool because personally, I don't have immediate connection with contemporary pieces, but that
mhm,
somehow, I mean, the video was shot really beautifully and very
amazing.
artistically, so that definitely was a factor in my attention. But yeah, tell me about that piece because it's very unusual sounding, but at the same time, it was very beautiful to listen to.
Well, thank you. I think it's a beautiful piece too. This, of course, we're referring to Monochrome Garden Number 6 by the Japanese German composer Malika Kashino. It was composed in 2015. And like you said, I actually wasn't ever really somebody who was, I wouldn't consider myself a new music specialist. And I still don't, by the way. But somehow during COVID, the idea of keeping what we do relevant in this time, this day and age, it just drew me closer to living composers. I can't exactly explain why, but I would say in the last year, especially, uh, I've just developed this um, intense passion for living composers, the music of living composers. So this is just one of the pieces that I've kind of delved into over the past year, but it's beautiful and it's like I've never played before, something like I've never played before because it's essentially all extended techniques.
Yeah.
There's no kind of traditional melodic. You think viola or string instruments, you think, oh, it like mimics the human voice. This is not that. And it's actually designed to be the musical representation of a Japanese garden in on a winter's night. So you hear kind of the icy wind, you hear the stones, you hear the brook running through, or the fountain or whatever, and it's so cool. It took forever to learn though, but it was so rewarding, and I got to work with her too, which
Ah,
was, I don't know if you've ever worked with any living composers, but that's like the best thing ever, because if you have a question, they can answer it.
yeah. Well, it's I can imagine. I've never had this opportunity. I think no, but I can imagine that it can also be scary because you have to meet their expectations, and they will
That's true.
approve
It is
or
intimidating.
disapprove. Yeah, in front of you.
Luckily, I have not ever worked with a composer who wasn't anything but generous. I've heard stories about um, people like Kurtag or Ligeti who were very, very, um, I guess, exacting with what they wanted and demanding of musicians. But um, my experience has been that composers are incredibly generous and helpful and excited that you're playing their music, and it feels collaborative, which is nice, because sometimes, I'll be like, oh, like I don't really understand. Can you lead me what to do in this section? And they'll just be like, actually, you know what? I don't understand either. Let me just rewrite this phrase,
Hmm, that's
and
nice.
that's so cool.
Yeah, I mean, it shows their empathy also that they're not so high up, which I think with classical music, some people think, oh, they're almighty and not very forgiving or
Mhm.
human, even just. So that's great that you have that living composer interactions.
Yeah, well, I want to say something to what you just said, speak to that, because I do think that the composer's wishes are the highest we can hope to achieve,
Yes.
right? However, it's important to remember that without an audience, or without a listener, or without even the performer, those notes don't mean anything. And so, what we do ultimately, of course, is an amazing art form that's deserving of a life study, but it's also collaborative and communicative, and um, sharing it with other people, whether it's the people you're playing with or the people you're playing for, is a crucial component um, to what we do. So it's both.
Yeah, definitely. And, well, philosophically, it can also be a problem of does music exist without it being actualized in sound and space? But for just practicality's sake, let's just say yes, musicians definitely play a huge role in continuing the tradition of music.
Definitely. If the tree falls in the forest but nobody hears it, what's that saying?
I don't remember, but yeah, essentially the same line of thought.
Something like that. Yeah.
But that reminded me because the way you were talking, it reminds me of a teacher giving advice. And so let's circle back. Fourth grade, eventually you figured out you want to do this professionally. Somewhere in between, you also decided to be on faculty at Stony Brook. So, what was that transition like? I know you kind of mentioned that you were riding the wave, but a lot of people who are probably listening to this are on the younger side. They're trying to
Mm.
decide, especially now, actually, right now it's April 8th, 2021. So, I think college decisions came out this past
Yes.
week.
Oh, don't I
So,
do? Yes.
yeah, do you want to speak to that based on your own experience of I mean, you went to Juilliard, for those who don't know, and so you definitely made a decision to really pursue it professionally and go into conservatory. So,
Yeah. No, I mean, I still feel like I'm just riding the wave.
me too,
Um,
honestly. But
yeah.
you like are much more accomplished, and you also, you know,
Look, I am very lucky. I've been in the right place at the right time. I definitely worked hard. I still try to work hard. But in regards to see, everything kind of one thing leads to another, and
Exactly.
I think it's important for young people, maybe students who are aspiring young musicians, to realize that keeping an open mind is so important, and you can't really force anything. You can't force yourself to win something. You can't force yourself to make a career. Everything is about um, going where life is leading you. Of course, there are decisions to be made, um, but to just keep an open mind, I think, is really important. And for example, I just to briefly tell you how just briefly from fourth grade. I grew up in Chicago, by the way. One time when I was like 12 or 13 years old, I saw Itzhak Perlman being honored at the Kennedy Center Awards. You're probably too young to remember that, or you may have
I'm
been.
not that much younger than you are. Can we tell people how old you are?
Yeah, I just turned 29.
And I'm 24, so it's not that huge of an age gap.
Yeah, so 5 years or four and change.
Yes.
When's your birthday?
December 29.
Okay, yeah, so basically 4 years.
Yeah. So.
Oh, wait, basically 5 years.
When's yours?
February 4th, 92.
Okay, I'm 96. I suck at math. So,
It's basically 5 years. Okay, yeah,
yeah.
we're 5 years apart.
4 years and 9 months, I think. Something like
Yeah,
that.
right. Exactly. Which also, in the grand scheme of things, is not so large, that difference.
No, and I'm sitting here in a tiny studio, and you are a faculty member at
Well, no, but let me explain. I mean, just
12, 13
briefly.
years old.
Well, I saw Itzhak Perlman at the Kennedy Centers, and I don't know if anybody remembers that his Perlman music program kind of was a special guest, and they played. And so I realized that he has a summer music program. That became a goal of mine. A few years later, I went there. I met Heidi Kasselman, who kind of at first totally introduced me to a way of thinking about the instrument that I hadn't before, and I found it really confusing. And then eventually, I was like, "Wow, she's like a genius!" And she teaches at Juilliard, and so that kind of led to Juilliard,
Ah, okay.
and uh, being in New York and in Lincoln Center, and everything kind of led to my association with the Chamber Music Society of Lincoln Center. Of course, that was a huge audition process as well. But
They're very, very, very selective.
yeah, yeah. Um, and I worked really hard for it at the time. I was only 21, I think. Um, but that was kind of also a logical step from going to school right next door, if you know what I mean. And my association with CMS introduced me to a lot of people who are on faculty at Stony Brook. And to be quite honest, I was not looking for a teaching job. And I was lucky enough to be invited by the faculty. And I love teaching. I was teaching as Heidi Castleman's assistant a little bit at Juilliard. And yeah, it just worked out, and I'm so grateful. And I started that job when I was 25 years old. And for those of you who don't know, Stony Brook is actually famous for its doctoral of music DMA degree, doctorate of musical arts degree. And so when I first started, the majority of the students were actually older than me, which was also an adjustment for me and for them.
Wow,
And
what was that like? So, are you Professor Lippman?
it depends who you ask. No, I sign all my emails Matt, and I insist that we treat each other like colleagues. I, of course, I do if I have a strong opinion, I do insist. I mean,
Insist.
that is my job. But yeah, it's just collaborative is a word that I've said a few times in this so far, and I think I don't know if it's like a trend in the world right now or
Maybe.
just how music is moving. Everything just feels better when it's collaborative, including teaching.
Yeah. So what's that been like for you to? I imagine you must be the youngest, no?
Well, on that faculty, I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. So what was that dynamic like? Because a lot of people, I mean, usually it's older professor, very experienced with decades of experiences that they can hark back to and talk. Maybe some of them will talk stories of, way back when you weren't born, this happened. And so there's always that kind of hierarchy, just implicit or explicit with the age. So what's that been like for you?
It's been interesting. I mean, there are two viola teachers at Stony Brook. The other one is Lawrence Dutton, who is the violist of the Emerson String Quartet.
Oh.
So we do have represented many generations on the faculty, and I think that's a beautiful thing. Honestly, I think it's a privilege for me to teach with him and learn from him. And it's also a good thing for the students to get a perspective. Um, I mean, I was still studying. I studied in Germany at the Kronberg Academy after Juilliard, and so I was still a student while I was teaching at Stony Brook, and I was flying Europe.
How did you do that? I mean,
Like,
I've heard that Kronberg, it's you can basically not live there and still go to school there. That's what I've heard. But
yeah,
how did that work? Because you were also concertizing, no?
well, let's just say before COVID, my life was quite busy.
Yes, I'm sure that I did not get to talk to any of these professionals that I've had on classical chats if it weren't for the pandemic. So there's that. But yeah, I know you were supposed to go to Korea.
Yes, I was going to be in Korea during May, but I think everybody was hoping that the quarantine situation would change after people started getting vaccinated, but it hasn't yet. And
Mm.
yeah, it's just unfortunate. But yeah, no, I mean, it's good. I mean,
I just can't
no,
imagine how you
it's
were a student and a teacher at the same time and concertizing. That's a
well, I felt lucky to be able to do that because I wanted to learn more. I was studying with Tabea Zimmerman,
mm,
who we'll mention later, probably,
mm.
um, who is, in my opinion, one of the greatest living violists. Um, and so I wanted to do that, and it was a privilege to be able to teach and, of course, to play. And you kind of just, like I said, go with the flow. You just make it happen,
That's
you
a
know?
yeah. That's exactly how I've felt. Because I was trying to think back because of this college decision season. I was trying to think what could I tell my audience, looking back at what I have experienced. Not that I'm anywhere where you are, but that is one thing that I've learned is to just go with the flow. Things happen for a
Yeah.
reason somehow, and I have to only realize that in retrospect. But a lot of things have been like this, and so yeah, just kind of going on with the flow. I have to say though, how did you manage to study in Germany without picking up German or like speaking German?
Oh, yeah.
So
I don't speak
very.
a
This
single
is
word
a
of
bit of a
German.
tangent, but when you mentioned before that you studied there, and you don't speak German, I didn't understand how that was possible.
I mean, being an English speaker is a lucky thing because most people in Europe have adopted English as the kind of universal
I th-
language.
I think you
So
just got luckier somehow because I had
yeah,
considered studying in Germany, but then I was like a language barrier. Every time I was there, I always just end up not being able to talk to some people because they are just like, no English.
I mean, it's interesting. Of course, many of the musicians, maybe all of the musicians I met spoke perfect English, but for example, going to the grocery store or ordering at a restaurant or kind of mundane normal life things, that really was difficult for me,
Yes.
and made me very insecure. But I never lived there. I would go there if I had a week off. It was really a lot of flying back and forth, but I never had a place there. I think the longest stretch I ever stayed for school was maybe 10 days
Oh
at a
wow.
time. So, being uncomfortable or insecure about the language was definitely real. But I never spent enough time to really be forced to adjust. You know what I mean? If I were better, I would have
No.
tried to learn a little bit, but
Anyway, didn't want to make you feel insecure. Not that I have the
I
power
just
to.
I can only imagine what it feels like to come to the US without speaking English, and
That was kind
it's
of
probably
me, but I was 9 years old, so I could go on being the shy kid for some
and you
years.
probably learned very quickly.
Well, I had to. The weirdest thing for me actually was people saying "What's up" and "shoot" all the time. I actually wrote my college essay. Speaking of college, about this. People used to say this all the time in fifth grade. That was when I came over, and I didn't understand. I literally did not understand what "shoot" meant, and I shoot like the replacement for the curse word.
Yeah. Oh, like,
Like
oh
I,
shoot,
yeah, I thought it. The only shoot I know is like a gun pointing
gun.
at something, shooting. And same with what's up. I didn't understand that slang.
You're like, what?
Ceiling, the sky. What? Yeah, so that was an adjustment, but I was 9, so
Yeah.
I survived. Let's just say.
Yeah, and your brain was still spongy enough to just
Maybe.
completely learn a new
Do you think your
language.
brain is less spongy now?
Yeah, yeah,
I don't know how to explain this
definitely.
to people when people ask me, "Oh, is it too late to learn an instrument?" What's your take on this?
Oh, no, it's not. Never too
Even
late.
though your brain is less spongy, how do you work around that?
I think the perfect example would be I mean, you can tell me if you feel the same way, but learning a new piece, for example, if it's something I learned when I was 13 years old, it's just ingrained, and if have to learn a new concerto or a new solo piece or something like this Cascino, it just takes longer. It takes more effort. It does not stick as easily, but that doesn't mean it's impossible.
Right.
I One of the things that I love about music is that by definition, music is in motion. You
Is
know,
it?
it is. It's sound in time. Every note comes from someplace. Every note goes to someplace. And I think our progress as musicians mirrors that.
Hmm.
You know, if you're not changing or growing, what's the point? And so, you know, I love to think about things in new ways, and I pride myself on growing and changing. It's just more incremental now than it was
Yeah.
20 years ago
Yeah.
or 15 years ago.
That's a much more positive way of looking at it. I've always, I mean, yes, your brain is just less spongy. So my comparison is always like, would anyone try to train for the Olympics at the age of 30? It's almost like, mm,
Serena Williams,
you really
she
love.
won gold when she was 31.
It's not like she started though at 31.
Oh, you're right. You're right.
That's the only comparison I can give, and somehow people feel very discouraged when they are faced with that age question when it comes to playing classical music somehow for some reason. But anyway, let's talk about music. You picked some
Okay.
music, no, for us?
Oh, I did. Yes, I was tasked with picking 3 viola recordings, I
Yes, and
believe.
this is something that I have started this year to ask every single classical chat guest, just because the reason I started the series was so that I can introduce through, I mean, not really myself, but through my conversations with others, we can kind of learn about classical music through different perspectives. And
Hmm.
what's really important to appreciate, in order to appreciate classical music or anything really, is to be exposed to it and to have someone guide you through. So I thought, why not just ask guests, especially when it's so many different fields. I mean, you are a professional violist and you're amazing at your profession, but then there are also others who don't do this for a profession and they might have other interests in certain pieces of classical music. So that's why
Hmm.
I thought every guest should curate a playlist for us and introduce to everyone.
Okay, that I love that. I think that's a great idea,
Thank you.
and I'm really excited to contribute to
Yeah,
it.
you're our first playlist curator.
Oh, great. I hope it's okay that I'm already breaking the rules then.
Ah, what rules were there though?
So I think two of the three recordings I would love to recommend are viola, and one is not.
Totally fine. I
Is
mean,
that
I
okay?
think, of course, I mean, it doesn't have to be just viola, and I also love to recommend non piano pieces because I like to step outside of my instrument.
I did release an album. It actually is my second professional recording. The first one was also talking about going with the flow and being lucky and everything. I recorded Mozart's Sinfonia Concertante with Rachel Barton Pine and Sir Neville Mariner before he passed away, and Academy of St. Martin in the Fields, which is like, as somebody who shall remain nameless said at the time, it's only downhill from there. And that sort of rang true. But my first full album is called Ascent, Ascent, and it's an album full of kind of fantasy like pieces, and one of them is Carmen Fantasy. The arrangement by Franz Waxman, which is a very popular violin piece. You went to Juilliard pre college. You probably heard that in the hallways all the
I
time.
think I even played with some child violinist. I mean, we
Yeah,
were all
yeah.
children back then, but yeah, I think I've even played it.
I wouldn't doubt it. It's kind of like the pinnacle of like achievement for a young violinist in terms of technique and flair and everything.
Virtuosity.
Exactly. It was composed for Heifetz, who of course was probably the greatest living violinist ever,
Yes.
second for, except for maybe Paganini.
Yeah.
But anyway, so I did this on viola,
Why?
which,
I mean, not as in like that was such a bad idea, but like what made you decide to do that?
well, yeah, my teacher at the time was like, "Who would do such a thing?" And I was like, "Well,
There's the diva in you.
you know, I think you're not wrong. My desire to play a piece like that stemmed from that kind of um, urge to have flair and to be kind of flirtatious on stage.
Mm.
Um, and the more I got into it, the more I realized Carmen's a mezzo soprano. So, like, you should play it on viola. Like, the tone is appropriate.
Right.
It's a perfect parallel. And of course, then the challenge was getting past all of the crazy virtuosic pyrotechnics. And that took a long time.
How long does it take for you to learn a piece like Carmen? Or maybe do you remember how long it took for you to learn it?
Yes, well, it was the first. I first did it in school in undergrad. That was it. It was an undergrad project. I played it. It was never very good. There were three waves, and then I brought it back for I think a round of recitals a few years later, and kind of chipped away a little bit better at the difficulties. And then when I was going to make this album, I really wanted to include that. And of course, preparing for that is, I mean, you just have to really figure out how to play every note. You can't really leave anything to chance.
Gonna
Um,
be forever.
and I played it once after I recorded it live. Actually, maybe a few times, but once that's on video, you can see it's on YouTube.
That's the one that I saw actually when Jan said, "Okay, I'm gonna ask Matt to play with us for the Schumann Quartet." I was like, I have to know who is this. I
Yeah,
mean, like I knew of you, but like I've never heard you play. So that was the first piece that I heard you play actually.
yeah,
That
it
video.
was ridiculous, and I actually swore to myself I would never play it again
Oh, why?
in public. It, it's just challenging. you know, so the teacher who said who would play such a thing, I think they were onto something because the nature of the viola is such that it speaks slower. It's it's it what it's good at are kind of the slow, soulful singing melodies. Of course, it was my goal to prove that wrong, and I did it, and I'm proud of it.
You should
And
be.
I think the viola can be virtuosic. Um, maybe I'll have a fourth wave with Carmen. You'll never know.
But when you say fourth wave or like waves, I think of Corona, unfortunately.
Oh, oops. Too soon.
Yes. But so yeah, I also definitely relate to having so many waves with pieces that I learned back then and then reviving them. But
And everything it changes every time, doesn't it?
yeah, I mean, I had to change a lot of bad habits to play the Beck variations, which I learned for that concert
Yes.
after 10, 11 years. Blast,
That's right. I
so many
remember
bad
you saying
habits.
that.
Yeah. Oh, you watched my videos. Yeah. So lots of bad habits that I always have to unlearn and fix after the initial wave. But
Mhm, definitely.
Carmen.
Fixing
Oh,
bad habits is difficult.
yeah.
So to speak to the thing before, it might take longer um, as you age to kind of internalize something,
Mhm.
but starting something fresh now is actually in some ways you're going to be better at it because you have all the experience that you've that's compounded that you can use to help learn. So it might take longer, but you'll probably learn it better and with better habits.
Yeah. Well, that's assuming that the person already has been studying for some years and to have that experience. But yeah, I definitely know like you don't have to spend that time correcting things. And
Right.
that's already time saved. Or maybe it's kind of like balances out so it's not actually longer time to learn a piece when you're older.
I actually want to. I actually, when I practice these days, I am almost barely playing. It's
What does that even mean?
well, I'll tell you. I mean, it's so it's like a puzzle. When I don't know if this is good. I assume it's helpful, but instead of just playing through and hoping for something to be better, I'll play something and then think about it. And honestly, that usually fixes it, and then I know that it's done and I can move on. And so it's really more like figuring out a puzzle in that way. But I actually do want to bring back playing through into my practicing because I think I've gotten so efficient, which is obviously good. But sometimes I just miss the like joy of playing,
Aw.
you know?
But that explains why you've been, before COVID, you were able to do so many things and travel all around and have
Being
so
efficient
many.
was born out of necessity, for
Yeah,
sure.
but
For
that
sure.
definitely is a skill that you have developed because of that lifestyle. But that's great.
Definitely.
That's really useful. I'm kind of the opposite. I just play through over and over and over, and then each time I discover something that's wrong with me, and then yeah, sometimes I have moments where I know how to fix something, but I usually just play through over and over rather than drilling. I think
Mm,
there usually people think of practicing as just drilling something over and over again, but
mm.
I just play through the entire piece over and over like a yeah, just on loop. Someone playing.
Yeah. I mean, at a certain point, you and I both, I think, basically have the technique required to play our instruments. And so drilling is only necessary
Maybe in
if
five
you're
more
trying to train
years.
your muscles,
Yeah,
but it's when we practice, what we're really trying to do is coordinate our brain,
that's true.
you know. My fingers can do this, but sometimes my brain can't.
That's funny.
And so that's what the and if you ever watch Hillary Hahn practice on her, hashtag 100 days thing, which is fascinating because she's amazing, right? But when she practices, she's really dissecting it, and she's also barely playing at all. It does not sound like her performances, and I always found that fascinating.
Hmm. Yeah, that's definitely not something that I do at the moment, but maybe in 4 years, maybe in 5 years, that will be me.
When you're old like me.
Yes, so old. So let's try to circle back. Viola is not exactly a violin, in that it is not as popular, unfortunately. So I asked you for some recommendations to people introducing them to viola. So I heard
Yeah,
you chose two.
two viola pieces and one not viola piece. And I think all of them are on YouTube, so you'll probably be able to link. So I've got two people that are inspirations for me on viola, and both of them have kind of two recordings that stick out to me, um, and some are on Spotify and some are not. Okay, so the first inspiration, viola inspiration, of course, is William Primrose, who is kind of accredited as being the Heifetz of viola. He was kind of the first person to, dare I say, glamorize the instrument, bring it to the forefront. He played all kinds of virtuosic music on it, and so of course he was a big inspiration to me, still is. And I think my all-time favorite recording of his is the Brahms songs for viola, contralto, and piano. And if you guys don't know those, we can play those. It has piano. They
Yeah.
are some of the most sublime pieces ever composed. And Primrose is playing it there with Marian Anderson, the wonderful contralto, and I forget who's playing piano. Sorry.
How dare you?
I know. But I mean, it's an old recording, so it sounds kind of hazy, but it's one of the best
That gives it
viola.
more of that soul, I find when it's
Yeah,
older recordings like that. I look
yeah.
forward to it. I'm nodding and saying yes, but I actually have no idea who any of these people you're talking about. So,
Okay, and there's another live recording that's on YouTube of Primrose and Grumio playing Symphonia Concertante, which is, of course, the piece I recorded. It's probably the piece I perform most often with orchestra, which is for violin, viola, and orchestra. And my favorite recording of that is a live performance of Grumio, William Primrose, and Otto Ackermann with Zurich Tonhalle Orchestra, and that's only on YouTube because it was recorded live. My second viola inspiration is my most recent teacher, Tabea Zimmerman, who is my favorite active violist. And there's a video of her on YouTube playing Penderecki Concerto, which was kind of, I just remember seeing that when I was maybe 10 or 11 years old and being like, who is this woman? And oh my God, she's amazing. And Penderecki himself is conducting. I think she recorded it, so it's probably on Spotify. But the video is like so cool. She's so badass. I don't know if I can say that word,
I
but
think you can.
it's like that's how to play viola.
Ah.
And her favorite Spotify album of mine is her Schumann record with the pianist Hartmut Hohl, um, and where she does Fantasy Stuka, American Builder, which is originally for viola, and the first violin sonata, and the oboe romances, and she sounds amazing.
So many repertoire I don't know. Because
Yeah.
Fantasy Stücke, I guess, transposed from cello.
Okay, well, that's interesting because no, it's actually originally for clarinet.
Ah,
Just like Adagio and Allegro is originally for horn.
right. But wait, Schumann Fantasy Stücke, right?
Yeah.
I found out there are so many different versions, like different compositions named Fantasy Stücke. There's
Yes.
one set for piano. There's one for, I guess, not cello anymore.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, it's a clarinet piece.
okay. And then there's like a trio or something. There's another Fantasy Stücke.
Probably. Yeah, there's a viola and piano piece called Märchenbilder, which is fairy tale pictures, and then there's a clarinet, viola, and piano trio that's called Märchenerzählungen, which translates to something similar, like fairy tale pictures or something.
Fairy tales. Yeah,
He really loved that kind of fairy tale thing.
the Romantic era.
Yeah,
I
right.
love that. It's full of
Yeah, yeah.
imagination, which is why I really love his compositions.
I mean, the concert we played was an all Schumann concert.
Yeah, that's why my ears are very
Perking up.
intrigued, perking up, and I will
Well,
definitely listen to this. Thank you.
you'll be delighted to know that my final recommendation, which is not viola playing, is also Schumann.
Oh.
There was a famous contralto, I think she was British or Welsh, named Kathleen Ferrier, who lived in the early 20th century. And there's a recording of her singing the song cycle Frauenleben und Leben by Schumann,
Mm-hmm.
um, which is it's a short cycle. It's not like Winterreise or something. I think it's only 30 minutes or something.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but this is like how I want to sound. Like it's the most touching, soulful. It's inward and outward at the same time. This is the beautiful thing about the viola, by the way, since you were wondering, is its versatility.
Yeah, I remember you saying those. Yeah.
It can do everything. We can sound like cello, we can sound like violin, we can sing, we can be open, we can be mellow and inward and pensive, and that is what this recording of Kathleen Ferrier singing Schumann does to me. It's just everything. It's pained, it's celebratory. It's just amazing. You gotta listen to it. It's my favorite recording ever.
I'm so excited. Thank you. Also, because you chose Schumann. So,
Yeah.
I've been trying to listen to all kinds of compositions, not just piano, but going to chamber and going into even voice now. So, yeah, I'm very interested. Thank you so much. I forgot to ask you one last thing, and then we'll end it here. But I could talk to you for so many hours. Guggenheim.
Yeah.
What was that like to play
Oh,
there?
it was fun. So I just played with my best friend Stella Chen, who is an amazing violinist. She actually won grand prize in Queen Elizabeth
Yeah,
competition
I
at the
saw.
most recent edition, which is like ridiculous. Like who wins grand prize at Queen Elizabeth? Like very few people, right?
Yeah.
Anyway, I'm so proud of her. She's amazing. And I guess the Guggenheim is doing this for the month of April. I don't know if it's going to extend past that, but they're doing this series of pop up concerts in the Rotunda. Of course, the building was designed by the famous architect Frank Lloyd Wright.
Yeah.
It's not a concert hall. It's incredibly echoey.
It must be even more so than a church.
Yeah, I think so. Because yeah, and like for anybody listening who knows the Guggenheim, it's basically
It's like a
a
pasta.
it's a ramp.
Yeah.
There's a middle rotunda and then it's just a ramp.
Yeah.
And so the sound not only just goes up and bounces up and down, but it goes into the ramp and then it's like all echoey and
Oh.
like
That combined with a string instrument.
honestly it was fun.
Yeah. That's
Yeah.
great.
Stella has one of those sounds. I once heard her play Beethoven Concerto in Belgium, and I was sitting in the last row, and she was like louder than the whole orchestra.
Wow.
Oh, but this is a thing for any of your fans who are string players. This is a really important concept for string instruments. Tell me if it's the same for piano, but pressing more does not equal playing louder.
Yeah,
Like for us,
it's the
projection
speed.
is it's all speaking for sure, articulation, but it's about spinning the sound. It's about the quality of the overtones. Getting more overtones means more projection. And so for a space like the Guggenheim, instead of crunching down more, what you really want to do is actually move the bow faster and get it to spin more because that gets it out there.
Yeah, I said speed actually, not speak. So yeah, speed.
Oh, you said speed.
Yeah.
You're right.
But yeah, I think it's also true for piano. If you want to dig deeper, then it becomes a much darker and pressed sound.
Mm.
Then yeah, that makes sense.
It's all a balance. That's one thing my teacher Heidi Castleman taught me. It's everything's a balance. You want the trumpet like brilliance, and you also probably want some earthy, chocolatey. Why choose when you can have it all? That's what I say to my students.
That's a great note to end on. I like that a lot. Thank you.
Thank you. This was really fun. It's an honor to be involved. Thank you so much for having me.
Aw, thank you for coming on. Well, that's the end of this first Classical Chats of 2021. Thank you very much for listening. I'm super excited to now go listen to his recommendations. It's always very fascinating for me to discover new recordings or just pieces of music that I've never heard of before. So I hope you join me and listen to his curated playlist on Spotify. It'll be linked in the appropriate places depending on where you're currently listening or watching this Classical Chats episode. If you would like to know more about Together with Classical and our charity efforts or support us, please go to our website www.togetherwithclassical.org or follow us on social media. Subscribe to our YouTube for more episodes of Classical Chats or follow us on our podcast, whichever platform you choose.